E-commerce Brain Trust Podcast Season 1, Episode 3, The Future of Brands on Amazon.
I think you lose even more control because you don't have a rep that you're working with. There's no one to address concerns with around purchase orders. It's completely automated.
This is the E-commerce Brain Trust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our brain trust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Hello and welcome to the E-commerce Brain Trust Podcast. I'm Kiri Masters, your host, and I'm joined by your co-host, Julie Spear.
Hello.
So in this episode of the show, we're going to be talking about the future of brands on Amazon. It's a little bit more of an esoteric subject than we plan to cover in future episodes, but I feel like this one is really an important thing to talk about right now in terms of the direct-to-consumer business model gaining in popularity and the many sellers on Amazon who are previously distributing existing brands and selling other brands besides their own are having kind of a wake-up moment right now in terms of the future of their business as it currently stands. Where I want to go with this particular episode is talking about the model of the distributor business model and the manufacturer business model and the retailer business model as it pertains to marketplaces like Amazon. And obviously Amazon is accounting for a huge portion of growth in the e-commerce channel in general, as well as just a big portion of brands' overall sales in recent years. So what we're going to cover in this episode is the distributor business model, the future of the distributor business model, brands who are currently using distributors and resellers as a method of getting their products out there on marketplaces and whether that's a good idea or not. And if you are a distributor and you're listening to this podcast or you're selling other brands right now, what should you be thinking about in terms of ensuring that your business is sustainable in the long term? Are you thinking strategically about the trends in the industry and how you can leverage those? So let's jump in. By way of an introduction to what a distributor is from the perspective of this show, when we're talking about distributors and resellers, these are entities, companies, or individuals who are selling other brands on marketplaces, and they may own that inventory, they may be drop shipping, they may be manufacturers themselves who have been producing goods for other brands on a contract basis or on an OEM basis. And they're starting to see now that brands are starting to go directly to consumer through marketplaces or through their own e-commerce store in what is often called a direct-to-consumer model. And we've recently seen big venture-funded examples of these kind of brands. So some that come to mind are Bonobos, the menswear brand, Warby Parker, Casper mattresses, all of these brands that you hear advertised on podcasts all the time. They seem to be building out their own supply chain and going direct to consumers, either through their own stores or marketplaces. And that's become very popular for consumers as well, because in theory, and definitely what the marketing behind these brands is that they're cutting the middleman out. And instead of the manufactured price being marked up by the distributor and then the distributor's price being marked up by the retailer, so by the time you're buying something in the store, you're paying like 3-4+ times as much as it costs to actually manufacture the product. What these new wave of direct-to-consumer brands are promising is that they're cutting out the margin of the middleman. The middleman doesn't exist because we're bringing the product directly to you. So if you're a distributor, then that's pretty bad news, because those brands are never actually using your services to begin with. And then also we're seeing consumers have kind of a backlash to this idea of distribution. So Julie, as a consumer yourself, are you kind of swayed by this messaging from like Warby Parker and Casper and brands like that who say we're cutting out the middleman?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you feel like you're going to be not dealing with markups to cover the middleman and you're getting a better deal, that's attractive to a consumer. And I think the other thing that's attractive is there is the trust. Trusting the authenticity of the product when it's coming straight from the brand instead of perhaps like a retailer or storefront name that you don't know as readily as you know the brand itself. So for me, as a consumer, it kind of engenders more trust in the product that I'm actually purchasing online.
Right, exactly. And so we've talked on the e-commerce Brain Trust podcast about Amazon in this season, at least primarily. And so since Amazon's inception, really, there's been a very active distributor model. So distributors would buy products from wholesalers, many different brands, and be selling them on Amazon themselves. The nature of Amazon's marketplace is such that those distributors end up competing with each other largely on price, because all of the things being equal around fulfillment and the customer experience, which happens when Amazon is fulfilling all of the orders themselves, there's not a whole lot else to compete on except for price. And that's one issue that if you're a distributor 10 years ago, maybe there was less competition on Amazon, but now there's a whole lot more just because of the size of the opportunity. More people are getting into it. But what's been happening more recently in the last couple of years is brands have decided to take the reins themselves with their marketplace representation. And so they're actually turning around to those distributors and saying, you can't sell on Amazon anymore. We want to sell on Amazon ourselves, and we're going to tie things up so that we're the exclusive seller on Amazon. And to be fair, from our perspective at Bobsled Marketing, where we help brands to scale their marketplace sales on Amazon, this is something that we encourage brands to do, right? Julie,
that's
the
our
first
story.
thing that we do.
Absolutely. We want them to gain control of their brand on Amazon. And so that is something that we help them to do.
Yeah. And the reason behind that is often from a pricing standpoint, the distributors may be pricing things differently to how the brand wants them to be priced. And also just it's more opportunity for the brand really to have, if they're getting to sell themselves, then they're getting probably more margin than they are from selling to that distributor.
Absolutely. They get that bigger piece of the pie straight to them.
Right. So in terms of some examples of clients that we've worked with that have had many distributors on Amazon, what are some stories that we have of brands who have had this distributor model in place previously and maybe moved away from it and their rationale for doing that?
Well, part of it is that getting that bigger piece of the pie for themselves. And another part is controlling their brand. When they're selling directly on Amazon as the brand, they can market their product in a way that's congruent with their message and who they are as a brand. And so some of it is controlling their branding. It's a big piece of it.
Right. What would that include? Like the product, they had issues with their product pages not being
some of
accurate.
the representation of the products on the product pages, really giving the message of who they are. When you are a registered brand on Amazon, you can tell more of your brand's story. When you're a reseller and you're not the registered brand, you're putting out just the basics of the product itself. So you do have the opportunity to sell more of who you are as a brand when you're the actual brand owner. And that is a piece of what we've seen some of our clients who are taking more ownership of their products on Amazon do. Take advantage of like the enhanced brand content and the storefronts and all of that.
Yeah.
So they want what is on Amazon to kind of echo or mirror what is also displayed on their presence outside of Amazon, whether it's their own website, whatever other platform they're selling on.
Absolutely. It's the omni-channel or multi-channel philosophy, right? If you're familiar with the brand from a consumer standpoint, you want to know that whatever you're buying on Amazon is the same as what you bought in the grocery store or from an ad on Facebook or wherever you got first introduced to the brand. It should be a consistent experience.
Right. And then taking control of selling direct to customers themselves allows for that consistency to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say that I went to the New York Fancy Food Show a couple of months ago, and in talking with some of the brands there, yeah, they give you a whole tote bag to walk in with to get samples. It was fun. And talking with a few brands next time. A lot of these brands, it is the easy way to ensure that they have at least their brand represented on Amazon in some way by allowing distributors to sell their products on Amazon. It's when we're talking about the different models of selling on Amazon, which was our previous episode about the vendor versus seller model, and we're talking about pros and cons of that and the different workload associated with it. If you're a brand allowing your distributors to sell your products on Amazon, that is the easiest option. It's completely hands off. You're just basically providing product to them. I guess you're kind of crossing your fingers that they're going to take the time to represent your brand accurately and price things properly and provide a level of customer service that your customers expect. So that is putting a lot of faith in your distributors, frankly, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. It really is. And I think the ease of selling on Amazon, it's now you can see why it makes sense for brands to just take hold of it themselves. They can do it and reap the benefits. And then there's agencies like Bobsled that can help with the management if they want a level of hands off as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and we've had to deal with, in more than a few instances, dealing with cleaning up a model of using distributors in the past.
Yeah, to take better control of the number of sellers on the product page, we've worked closely with some brands to do a cleaning up. And what it's meant on their end of things is revisiting their agreements with distributors and maybe tightening the expectations or the boundaries they have around where the distributors can sell. So there's the work on the brand side, and then we do the work of monitoring the sellers that are on the product pages for them and working to clean it up.
Yeah, and there's even a program that's still in a pilot phase that Amazon's introducing around, I think it's primarily meant to prevent counterfeiting on the Amazon marketplace, which has become more of an issue recently. But this beta program called Transparency is really going to help brands deal with figuring out which channels their individual products have been distributed from through encrypted barcodes on their products. So ultimately brands would be putting these encrypted, they look like QR codes on their products, and they would be able to encrypt each run of products with a identifying code which tells them which channel they actually distributed that batch of inventory through. So they would be able to see whether a particular batch of inventory was distributed to Walmart or distributed to another distributor, and find out exactly how this inventory showed up on Amazon. Because that's part of the issue as well, is that these brands, they could have a whole network of distributors and decide, let's go direct to consumer ourselves, and then they have to figure out who are these sellers on Amazon, where did they come from, and how did they get our products? And it isn't an easy thing to figure out.
Yeah, that's a pretty ingenious program that Amazon's testing out there with Transparency. And it just underscores other moves they're making to support brands having more control over the channel themselves, with them upping the game for brand registry and the criteria to become a registered brand on Amazon recently. Amazon's showing a commitment to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They can see that it creates a better customer experience for their consumers shopping on their platform if they're dealing with the brand directly themselves.
Yeah. Going back to my point, about being consumer, trusting the product that you're purchasing, trusting that it's genuine product of that brand. It's good that Amazon's making these strides.
But not good if you're currently a distributor.
There is a flip side, isn't there?
That's right. Exactly. So if you're a distributor, what options do you have on the table? And in the show notes for this episode, we have a really in-depth article about the distributor business model and what options are on the table for them, as well as a couple of real-life examples of companies who moved from a distributor model to owning their own brand. And that's one of the options that distributors have here. I think that distributors could be in a very enviable position, frankly, around having some data around what types of products sell and have the ability to create their own brand that fills in some gaps in the market. Generally, they're going to have a pretty good understanding of the supply chain in their industry and have contacts. If they're not manufacturers themselves, they're able to source those fairly easily. But compared to a brand just kind of starting up through other means, distributors have a lot more information about what consumers want and what has sold in the past. And adding to that opportunity of around creating your own brand as a distributor, marketplaces like Amazon are a perfect place to start. And they even have programs specifically for brands who are looking to sell on the Amazon marketplace exclusively, like the Amazon Exclusives program. Amazon themselves have been creating their own private label brands, especially in the apparel category, and more recently food and baby and pet products. So you can see this strategy in action by Amazon themselves. They were essentially a retailer and a marketplace, and they used all of the data from their retail and marketplace sales to figure out what kind of brands to launch with what kind of customer value proposition at what price and what kind of sizes and selection they should offer. So it's not to say if Amazon can do it, anyone can, but that's the ultimate example of a distributor creating their own brand.
It really is the ultimate. And talk about the ultimate example of leveraging the data that you have as they have their pools and pools of data around customer purchasing habits and products that sell.
Yeah, exactly. So the other option that's available to distributors is to negotiate exclusivity with brands. And to go back to the point that I made about some of these food brands that I talked about being prepared to sell through distributors and that being the most hands-off model for them, it can be a win-win scenario for the distributor and the brand if you can negotiate an exclusivity arrangement with a brand and say, and commit to representing their brand in the way that they want them to. So for you, as a distributor, it means that you're not necessarily going to be competing with so many other distributors. You get first dibs on the products as they come out. You can launch products on behalf of the brand, have a closer partnership with the brand, and be a real partner to a brand rather than having more of a transactional relationship. So that can be a great win-win. And Amazon certainly does favor exclusivity arrangements. If you want to register for some programs, you can demonstrate to Amazon that you're the exclusive distributor of that brand, and you will get access to preferential programs with Amazon.
Yeah, those are good points. So all hope is not lost for a distributor. There are ways around this new trend of brands selling direct.
Yeah, exactly. It's a new world. I think it's become fairly obvious to distributors in most cases that things are changing, and those are two ways that they can adapt and thrive in this new world. Mm-hmm. So in closing, yeah, there's definitely more competition than ever on Amazon, off Amazon. There's also, just to throw another trend into the mix here, there's been a big rise in the popularity of white labeling products. And since Amazon's relatively easy to start selling products on, and you get access to millions and millions of people buying products every day, a lot of individuals and small businesses have started to create their own brands, and that has further increased competition on the marketplace, especially for popular categories like cell phone accessories and electronics and kitchenware. I tried to buy a wireless keyboard on Amazon the other day, and I didn't want to spend too much time thinking about it or comparing products. I just wanted like a Logitech wireless keyboard, and I was just greeted with about 5 pages of identical looking wireless keyboards with seemingly no difference that had all been clearly made by the same factory in China. Have you had that experience?
I have. And as an avid Amazon shopper, in those moments, I'm like, I'll go to the store because I just need to look at it in person. It can be overwhelming when you're looking for certain products, and that's what you're greeted with. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And to go back to the point around the benefit that distributors have, that's probably one area where they could have an edge, is actual differentiation and genuine improvement on products rather than just putting your own label on it.
Yeah, same as the rest of them. Find a way to set themselves apart.
Yeah, exactly. And what would be your sort of closing tip here, Julie, for both for brands and distributors?
I think my tip is more directed at brands, that if you're looking to sell direct to customers through selling directly as a brand on Amazon, commit to it. And at the time of launch, be willing to drive some of your customer base that you have for your own website to Amazon to help get things rolling. Because if you're going to do it, you want to do it right. So I think really committing to it and being willing to leverage the customer base that you have outside of Amazon for the benefit of your launch on Amazon is a really important thing.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, that'll do it for today. So you can get the show notes and more content related to this topic at bobsledmarketing.com/podcast. And I'll talk to you again next week, Julie.
All right. Talk to you soon.